What is the biggest AI headache you are seeing from talking with CIOs in the market?
The biggest headache, context integrity. It's not really about hallucinations. It's really about the integrity of the information. Any bad data is just going to get amplified instantly. And before you know it, it will be pervasive across your enterprise in terms of actions it might have taken based on that misinformation or even a lapse of information.
Today's guest is Ravi Loganathan, EVP of Salesforce Data 360. Ravi believes that while the first wave of AI was defined by speed, the next wave must be defined by accuracy and context.
The only skill that I wish leaders always hone in on from time to time is systems thinking. It is not about the AI. It's not about the data. It's about your business. Information needs to be fluid. How do you make sure information is fluid across the enterprise? That's kind of why we've pioneered the Zero Copy Alliance and everything else, where any Salesforce data in 60 seconds or less is visible in Snowflake or BigQuery or anywhere that is of importance to the company. Vibe coding is a great way to get the POC done, but coding has never been the biggest problem in technology. What happens after you code? 60% of our time goes in the non-feature areas, the scaffolding, the fundamental abilities you need to give to your software around usability, performance. Those are the ones that matter.
What's kind of the most overrated trend right now?
Build an agent. Most overrated trend. The most easy analogy is this. If you're a pilot sitting in an airplane, you're used to 15 controls. Suddenly someone gave you 50 more controls on top of the 15 and said, fly the plane. That's what we are treating the agents to be. But what you really need is an air traffic control.
With all the data security, governance, access, privacy regulations, what is the right way to navigate? What is the one thing like that CIOs should do to differentiate?
We need to be a little bit more mindful of what is.
Hi, Ravi. I'm so fortunate to have you join AI Heroes and Headaches. You've had quite the career, and now you run our Salesforce Data Cloud, and you are also a Stanford Distinguished Scholar, and you've had this amazing journey, and now you're working at Salesforce. Tell us a little bit more about your journey. How did you get started?
Hey, Vivian, first of all, pretty excited. You have an amazing podcast. There's a lot of interesting tidbits from time to time. And you have taken us into a new journey of trying to imagine the role of agentic enterprise. So, first of all, thank you for doing an awesome job here. And, it's very easy to walk down the memory lane and say, everything worked as perfect as it can be. But the reality of it is, most of my career has been spent building a lot of large scale systems, cloud platforms, learning from the trenches day in and day out with the focus on distributed systems at scale. And throughout my journey, it has been really rewarding to not just think about the technology aspect of what tech is doing, but the business side of it. I've been fortunate to, really be part of major initiatives at Microsoft and Salesforce. But the real reinforcement of understanding the business came from Stanford and the LEAP programs. Especially, if anyone is out there wanting to pursue, good understanding of business while you are really doing your day job, that's the perfect place to start with in exploring the LEAD program. My lens in what we do every day at Salesforce is really how do we transform ourselves to really be an apps, AI, and a data company in a world where humans are augmented with machines. And that's really the heart of what we do every day. And this transformation, like anything else, has been both exhilarating as well as, pretty challenging to say the least from time to time. So again, huge thanks for having me on. And you are also been a great partner at Salesforce, really making it all come together. Thank you.
Wow, what an amazing story. Not only are you a technologist, but you also took the time to go to the Stanford Business School to learn the world of business and apply it into the world of growing technology into businesses and scaling them. Tell us, if you were at a dinner party, someone asked like what you actually do all day to keep our
Uh,
Salesforce data cloud engine running, how would you describe it?
Fascinating question. Dinner parties. I think first I would, would have first explain what is Salesforce. I was surprised when I actually joined Salesforce in 2019. Many people were wondering what is Salesforce in my social circle. They're not necessarily all technology people, but so it's a little interesting to think about it. At the heart of it, if I were to summarize everything that I do, it's really with only one goal. How do we help our customers understand their customers intimately so they can serve them well no matter what they do, whether they're trying to sell them, market them, support them, help them in their customer journey at all touch points at all time. That's it. That's the crux of what Salesforce itself is about, is really helping every business do it. And through that, we want to be the platform of change. And business is the greatest platform of change. And that's really what Salesforce stands for. And so that's really at the heart of it. How do we really help our customers understand their customers? That's it. Whether it is
Wow.
AI today or what we have been historically doing in the past, it's always been the same goal, to know your customers well and serve them well.
Hey, thank you so much for sharing that perspective of what Salesforce does in helping customers connect with their customers. And now, fast forward, you've been in tech for a long time. Look at the current hype in 2025, 2026. We've been in a lot of AI conversations, but few companies are getting to production scale, harnessing the power of AI. What is the biggest AI headache you are seeing from talking with CIOs in the market?
Yeah, there's a lot of information overload, and I would say information warfare. If you had to think about the model companies competing with each other every day, if you are in tech, you can't really run away from it. To me, what I'm observing is the following. Imagine that you are a physician and you are a surgeon, and someone is in your operating table, and you've also been given all their medical records around you, along with a bunch of tools of how you can operate on them. You kind of know your specialization a little bit, but that's not good enough to do the surgery. The reality of it is, in this example, the models are like the surgeon. The patients are the jobs or the tasks that we need to do. We have a disparate set of assets of information available to them. And the idea that somehow you're going to get the right outcome you need just by feeding all the right data, all the information and all the tools to AI is not going to be sufficient. The biggest headache people have is, how do I really put it in a context so that people can actually take advantage of this information with the AI to really get an intelligence outcome, right? That's really what people are struggling with. There's no dearth of AI tools or platforms or ecosystems to build. But what really is missing is good, clean, trusted data with which you can actually do something with the business. That's the biggest headache people are having. Now, it kind of got verbalized last year through hallucinations, but it's not really about hallucinations. It's really about the integrity of the information through which you get intelligent actions out, and how reliable are these actions going to be. It's very beautiful because AI hallucinates in the sense that it can make stuff up. Whatever misinformation, it gets amplified through this process. That's the crux of the challenge. The biggest headache, one word: context integrity.
Oh, interesting. So I heard a few things, right? Data is the big trap for unlocking the value through AI. And then you mentioned context. I also hear that term a lot. Maybe break it down for us. What does it mean?
Yeah, let's just imagine this. We are having this lively conversation or a video call right now. There is a premise with which we started, which is trying to explain or take a perspective of what's happening in the industry right now through AI. That is kind of the context of it. I could rather talk about anything I want in life versus, a more focused conversation about it. But it's also grounded in you knowing who I am, doing your prep work, me knowing who you are, what's going to be of interest to you. We both have a judgment, if you will, in terms of what's likely to happen. And that is the context with which we both are carrying on this conversation this very second. This is very important. If we don't know each other, the conversation could go anywhere. And again, that's true for all the AI agents that people are building. If they don't point them to the right set of goals, right set of ambitions that the AI agent has with the right information, it's not going to work. Imagine this the other way. Yeah, imagine you have a new hire walking into your office. You're going to arm them with all the knowledge that you have in your enterprise with through a mentor, an onboarding buddy you would give. Not just that, from time to time, as a manager, you give them feedback, you coach them, you mentor them, you correct them. And more importantly, at the end of it, you also have to make sure that they are able to do their job well and give them feedback and retrain them and reskill them from time to time. None of that is going away in the AI world. Even if you have an agent, you really need to keep the agent informed with everything that's happening in your enterprise, with the most accurate, relevant information. The irony in all of this is because it's AI and it's at machine scale, what's really going to happen is any bad data is just going to get amplified instantly. And before you know it, it will be pervasive across your enterprise in terms of actions it might have taken based on that misinformation or even a lapse of information, as the case may be. So that's really where can you really rely on the actions and steps that these agents are taking so that you can further your business. It was very easy in the first wave when we were really thinking about POCs type stuff, right? It's and last year there was all the POC mania. And if you really think about it, it's very, very simple. You can always show instant value because the speed is there. That is undeniable. Accuracy, not so much. That was an afterthought. But in business scenarios, accuracy matters, relevance matters. And that's essentially what context is all about. How do you make sure that AI always has the right information at its fingertips for every step?
Interesting. Okay, so I heard a few things. There's a set of knowledge that people need to have access to. Then there's the people component, who you're talking to and who you are as the second pillar. And then the third pillar is like the judgment. Based on the information knowledge, the people, you have to judge what you actually say and execute and what you don't. And in our conversation, the topic is AI heroes and headaches. I want to learn all the headaches and I make that judgment. And in the machine with human world, tell us a bit about how do you think about scaling that? Because I think you also started this newsletter about human speed, machine scale. Share a bit more of like how that came about and how you think about scaling that through the system. Because it sounds like it's not the LLMs. It's a more sophisticated, holistic system that we need to be able to rely on.
Yeah, I mean, we walk you through some examples of real world use cases I saw last year, right? Obviously, if you think about it, the first wave was all about how do we help customers with customer support. That's a low hanging fruit, if you will, a sweet spot to really use AI and agents to answer customer support questions. Seems very trivial, but in reality, if you think about it, if I call you about a device that I purchased from you that's misbehaving, and I go through a phone line to you as a CSR. You have a battery of tools in your arsenal. You may have some knowledge articles, you may have some manuals. I can tell you about the error code I'm seeing on my device. You're going to go through your troubleshooting guides. And more importantly, you as a human would have context switched 5 or 6 or 7 different assets to help me go step by step to troubleshoot it. Now, as it turns out, one of the examples that I saw was glucose monitor troubleshooting guide that is given to the CSR reps of a major manufacturer. I was stunned. It was an 80-page document, which was just a massive flowchart that goes back and forth across all the documents. There is no way anyone can reason over it in a meaningful fashion. The same problem happened in a completely different domain. This was in a finance domain about loans and interest rate tables and so on and so forth. It was very complex because all it had was a big, massive document. It was a document inside a document inside a table inside a table inside a table inside the same document. And you, as a human, can actually perceive it a lot better than what machines could ever do. You could also think about a different one. We all have our manuals of our autos, right? I'm sure you have something in your glove box. You open it, you would see there are actually many, many portions of it that make no sense to you as a consumer because there's one portion that's catering to someone who's a novice trying to operate a car. There's another which is about troubleshooting sections. And then there's a whole lot of legal language which no one understands other than if you're a lawyer. This is the state of all of the content that people have created historically. They were meant for humans to read it. There are a few different things. First, it's targeted towards certain persona. Two, it's targeted towards certain use case that that persona may be after. And three, it is really about who you are at the end of the day and how are you going to perceive it, right? So there are 3 layers of problems. And last year, when these AI agents for health came about, they all treated them all the same way. We saw really very diverse results set because much of that was not relevant, because if I'm a dealer of a car company and I'm going to the help agent looking for something as I'm fixing the vehicle, that's very different from me being a car owner and looking at it versus I'm being a lawyer who's trying to find out what's the legal language in that manual. They're three different things. Net net, we have to really think about how do we really contextualize the content for a specific use case, in this case, an help agent. We had spent countless amounts of time thinking about it very deeply to say, how do we interpret these in a way that it makes the most sense? And that's how we created this construct called intelligent context. It's a new capability that we launched at Dreamforce last year, and that's what's powering help.salesforce.com and various other initiatives that our customers are also using. It just is very simple. Don't look at the same content the same way, do a simplified RAG, and then try to expect a better outcome. It's just not going to happen. Everything needs to be purpose built, handcrafted. So by that, what we imply here is if you're saying I'm building an agent for customers, it needs to be treated a certain way. Now, the handcrafting is not that hard because LLMs can help you quite a bit there. Half the stuff in your manual is not relevant if you're not a lawyer. Half the stuff is not relevant if you are a lawyer, right? Both ways matter. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of organizing your content, interpreting your content differently for different uses, and then being able to really go deeper in terms of the kind of things that the objective function of it. When we say we want an agent to answer to a glucose monitor malfunctioning, we better be right. We can't go off rails. We cannot hallucinate. But if you don't provide the right context to say, what is this about? What is the objective function? It's just not going to work. So that's an example of context.
Wow, this is a lot to unpack because, as you're going through the loan documents, the legal disclaimers, the, 80-page document manual, I'm thinking, yes, this is like not humanly possible to read. My favorite part is before a company have you sign something, they usually have a 20-page legal disclaimer, knowing that you're not going to read the most important thing. And what I'm hearing you say is, through intelligent context, it's not only organization of the most important information, but also it's serving end users and the key personas for the objective they want to meet at the time of consuming that information to dissect like what exactly they have to process using our local human brain LLM, and intelligent context does that, which I know for a fact that today, like, LLMs don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, they can, except that we need to guide them the right way. This is where the personalization aspect matters. This is where knowing who is asking this question, why are they asking this question, why would they think about it a certain way matters. This very conversation, there are many people who are going to watch this. If you're a developer, you'll have a different takeaway from what we just discussed. If you're a CDO, you'll have a completely different perspective on what just discussed. If you're a CEO, you'll have a different perspective. If you're a support agent, you'll have a different perspective. Just because we humans, each one of us, are uniquely different and our interpretation skills are very different. If we don't impart that into this chain of thought that an LLM can have on any scenario, any use case, it's not going to work. Everything needs to be personalized for the scenario, for the use case, for the user in context.
Got it. And so if I think about the help agent that we have on the Salesforce website, maybe help me break down a bit of this into that specific context. Like the agent has the knowledge access, but then when it's serving the customer, how is it knowing like who am I as I come to the website and serving
Great
me the need?
question, right? So if you go to help.salesforce.com and you start asking a question about, let's say, Salesforce Data Cloud limits, you're getting general answers when we don't know who you are. That's the reality of it. But it's already curated to know that people who are asking this are really looking for help. They're not looking for product purchase. We are very clear about that. We're not going to throw in all kinds of information irrelevant to the context of the agent, which is helping someone who has a challenge. Now, the next step of it is as you have this conversation back and forth at some level, you're going to raise your hand and acknowledge that, you are who you are. And maybe you log in with your Trailblazer account, or you identify yourself as a customer or an employee of the customer or a Salesforce user. The moment we know it, we kind of know everything about who you are. What have you purchased? What products capabilities do you have? What is the instance that you have of Salesforce. What's going on in that instance? Is it healthy? Is it not healthy? We have a lot of information that can tell us more about why are you here right now, who you are, why you here, and then we can refer to the prompts that you're giving, the utterances you're giving to further refine the way that we are going to search our content, curate our content, and respond to you. It's that simple. So we're not going to be, scattershotting and giving the same plain vanilla answer to every user who is interacting with our agent. It's that simple.
In other words, your understanding of the person who's accessing the site, that's also changing. It's not static.
Yep.
You found it
Another good
very
example is, I'll give you another one. One of our customers, a luxury watch retailer, has really customized their entire experience on their website. What happens there is, you'll usually find the catalog, the product catalog, you'll see it, you can browse through it. But then the moment you have an agentic conversation with it, and the moment you give or drop breadcrumbs for us to try to understand what you're trying to do with it, we really personalize the entire website for you. It's called the adaptive websites. It's a new capability we're just launching right now with that, entire experience of how you experience that company changes dramatically. You don't need the gazillions of other models and makes of the watches that you may want to show there. You want to be personalizing it to exactly what the user is about. So personalization is an important aspect. The scenario is also an important aspect. When someone is trying to buy, that agent should behave differently, like the SDRs, versus someone is trying to get help for a product they already purchased, you want to treat it differently. Or when you're trying to market to them, it has to be treated differently. So both matter. And these are all the contexts. At the end of the day, they're all, of course, be using large language models in very interesting ways. But without the right context, without the right information about the user, the scenario, what else is happening in the ambient environment, it's pointless.
wow. It's a lot to unpack. Well, say more. So, the data that the machine AI has access to is not static. And I'm also hearing, CIOs sometimes say, oh, I need to go on this 3-year data journey. Based on the example you're saying, this actually sounds like pretty far. We happen to be advanced and we've done a lot of investments, but maybe help unpack a bit from you working with different CIOs. How are they approaching it? What are the biggest successes and what's not working?
Yeah, I think there are a few different camps of CIOs that I see. If you really see, every enterprise is very diverse. That's the norm. It's not an exception. If you're really talking about the enterprise segment, the Fortune hundreds, they obviously have lots of people who are working on a lot of different technologies. There are people building agents on Google. They're building people building agents on Microsoft stack. They're building it on our stack, AWS, you name it. It's very diverse, to say the least, or OpenAI directly, and the case may be. In almost all those cases, the way it starts with is the following. I want an agent to do a function, whatever that might be, an objective function. It could be employee facing, it could be consumer facing, it could be a background workflow agent. These are the three camps that I've seen. In almost all these cases, they immediately run into this roadblock. Now, what do I feed this agent? How do I govern it? How do I secure it? How do I manage it? So they kind of spend a little bit of time trying to build it, but they immediately realize that agents are like the new websites or the new apps of the enterprise, and they're all siloed. They would ideally like, as example, if I'm in the investment banking space, I want the customer conversations that I'm having on the CRM side of it in Salesforce to also reflect all the knowledge that I have about my other business activities that I may be having with this client, that is stored in an ERP system somewhere, or inside the meeting notes and case notes that I may have logged already as a part of my email inside Office system. It doesn't matter where it is. So one CIO actually described this very well to me. It's more like every vendor comes in and pitches their wares without realizing that the company needs all of them and not any one of them necessarily. So this is a big headache, if you will, because now you have to train your customers and your employees on multiple tools. Your developers inside your company are now dealing with multiple technology stacks with completely different characteristics. This is all great when you are doing experiments. When it comes time for show and production, you really want the basics of computer science to come into play. What is a performance characteristics? What's the reliability characteristics? What's the failover characteristics? How do you think about information governance and disclosure, data exfiltration in and out of the system? So when they get into all the complexities, it becomes very clear that the diversity of these agents is very diverse. So that's one problem. The second problem is, even when you are on the same stack, how do you really think about the information itself? How do you know that this feed of information that I get nightly is still valid, that it didn't have an upstream problem in the pipeline? How do I know missing information from incorrect information? How do I really know about, uh, you know, data being fluid across these ecosystems? Right? This is an important problem because far too often, these are complex pipelines riddled with many, many, many challenges. So at Salesforce, one of the mental models we had when we started in 2019 down the path of becoming a data company was, how do we embrace fluidity? How do we make sure information is fluid, immediate and instant across the enterprise, not just within Salesforce, but outside Salesforce? That's kind of why we've, pioneered the zero copy alliance and everything else, where any Salesforce data in 60 seconds or less is visible in Snowflake or BigQuery or Redshift or anywhere that is of importance to the company, and vice versa as well. What the fluidity allows us is to really bridge the gap in terms of making sure the latest, freshest information is available for use within our walls or outside our walls. The second aspect of getting that concrete awareness that this can be trusted is really metadata. We need to semantically understand what's the information in each of these places and not really get into any kind of, ambiguous situation about should I be using this information or not for a specific use case. So that is another important element that we are seeing. So again, going back to your question, how are the CIOs? The ones who are more mature, they realize that they are better off encouraging their teams to go build agents and AI, co-pilots, assistants, whatever you might want to call it, to reduce things that are scarce in their organization towards the top line growth. There are some agents that people are building towards the bottom line aspect of it, but then many who are, forward looking are really trying to see, if I want to grow my business, what is scarce in my business? It could be time, it could be people, it could be, ability to comprehend certain things, whatever it might be. And how do I use agents? To give you an example, I have an amazing customer out of India. What they do is be operating in the financial services industry, offer loans and everything else to, a billion plus population out there. It's a very hard problem. Of course, it's very complex, regulatory and everything else. But the key thing here seems to be, how well can they actually continue to engage with the customers with voice? So they have these outbound dialers that are continuing to engage with their customers through their loan process and also payments and collections, which is an equally important part to it as well, to try to nudge them, to remind them to move further and so on and so forth. This is the power of something that AI could do to help eliminate the scarcity, which is they don't have enough people who can follow up with their customers on non-payment, as example. It's just not viable. You can send emails, text SMS, they're going to ignore it. So phone calling is an important part of the cultural ecosystem there. And so they have thought about how to use AI to help with that. That's an example of it. Now that AI is definitely helping them reach more people than humans that they may have had before, but it also comes with a flip side. There is an economics angle to it. Is it really helping me move the needle? Or is it going to really cost me more with the LLM tokens? What's it going to be? Because there is a trade off between reducing the scarcity with LLM versus the cost of the LLM itself. So this is the balance. Key takeaway for me is it needs to be about all of the enterprise. It's not about one vendor versus the other. Information needs to be fluid. Use cases need to be tailored towards reducing scarcity while balancing the economics when it comes down to the token limits and the sizes and the cost factor of it.
Wow, that's a very holistic view. I think you're so spot on. Agents are like the new websites, and there's all this information back to the intelligent context because the data is always fluid and changing to create that hyper personalized experience. It's not just the LLMs and the tokens you buy. There's a much bigger machine, data machine that has to be working through the data fluidity and the metadata that you talked about. And then the last thing is balancing scarcity. Basically, don't just throw AI at a problem. You also have to think through the agent economics of, are you creating more value through the use case and picking the right use case, because tokens are expensive. All that data processing is also expensive. Say more about, the data governance piece, because I think there's, organizational silos. In some ways, a lot of organizations in different departments are building agents. It's easy. Yeah, but you can vibe code an agent to do it. It sounds like with all the data security, governance, access, privacy regulations, like, what is the right way to navigate? What is the one thing, like, that you think CIOs should do to
I think
differentiate?
nothing of what was in the past pre LLM era is disappeared. If anything, we have got more of them than less, right? And it's important for us to understand at the end of the day, all of this is to serve the purpose of furthering the business, which is really helping customers at the end of the day. That's really what this is about. And, if anything, we need to be a little bit more mindful of what is the agency that we give an agent. This is important. It's not about saying, let me throw an agent at any problem and solve world hunger. That's not really going to work. To give you again an example, let's just dwell on this. Going back to the outbound dialer example, there's a lot of privacy rules that are there. I can't just call you, Vivian, nonstop, incessantly, trying to hound you for the loan that you need to pay. It's just not going to work. And there are government rules. There is frequency capping that needs to happen there to say no more than X times in a week that you can contact a customer. Even then, the amount of agency and information you give to the agent has to be very limited. You can't throw saying, okay, I'm going to give the full fire hose of everything I know about VVN. Agent, you have a conversation with VVN and go to town on it. It's not going to work. You may be very upset. You may say, I won't pay. You may argue with the agent for any number of reasons. The agent needs to stay in bounds and be, respect the brand, the company, and more importantly, should only know what it needs to know. To give you an example, governance and information security is at the heart of every enterprise software forever. It's not changing just because you brought an LLM. Even though it's a machine, you still need to regulate it through that lens. For instance, let's take another one. Imagine that you have some information in a bank that's exclusively private that only the bankers are supposed to know, not the customer. And imagine that you have a phone call, talk to someone about an issue with your bank, a refund, whatever it might be, or wire transfer, anything you want. There is a reason there was a separation of concerns between what the customer can see and what the banker was allowed to see to help you with it. That doesn't go away because you have an agent. That still matters. So a customer-facing agent has to be inherently limited in what it can or cannot do. This is where definitely one aspect of it is from an actions perspective of guardrails. Take these actions, do not do this. And you also want determinism in there. You don't want the agent deciding, for Vivian, I'm going to just first refund and then check whether she's eligible for refund. But, there is always a check refund before you do. So this is what we call as agent script to introduce determinism into your agentic flows. But that's just at the action level. Now we need to go one level down. How are we going to really think about it as it relates to the information that these agents and agentic actions are taking? So for instance, it could be very clear that you could say, if a consumer is talking to you, do not share any information about their family members. This is very particularly important in healthcare and financial services and so on, where you don't want information disclosure by the system at any point in time. This means that the identity systems, the security models of the past that have been there, all matter. They just didn't disappear because we threw an agent. The same way, when that agent is saying at some point, I can't do this stuff anymore, I'm going to transfer it to a human, and it does a call transfer, and the human picks up another line, and then goes through their own employee-facing agent, security still matters. You're not allowed to see, certain PII or other information about the customer in the real life. That applies to an agent working on behalf of the employee too. How are you going to think about information security in a wide, vast variety of data that's going to be instantly available to an agent with the right context matters. So this is where the hard part about how you govern information fundamentally is different. At Salesforce, we have been busy reinventing the entire security infrastructure around an attribute-based access control model so that we are able to say any information, structured, unstructured, stuff born in Salesforce, things from outside the walls of Salesforce, they're all well understood in terms of what's in there, how do we really use AI to help us govern them, and make only the right piece of information, of course, with a human in the loop in the form of an admin certifying these actions that the AI is taking to make sure that the right information with the right context, with the right level of privileges is, always put in use. There's a third element to this governance angle. This goes down to the fact that what I was telling you before, enterprises are diverse. There are hundreds of agents of different things. Guess what? It's always a multi-agent system. At some point, the employee says, I don't know, I'm going to transfer you to a level 2 CSR who happens to have a different AI tool built in a different stack. Now, you have agents talking to agents trying to solve a problem on behalf of the customer. Now, you have three levels removed. You started with the consumer, you went to one employee agent, you're now going to another employee agent. Now, the kind of actions you can take also matter quite a bit. So this is where agent to agent communication needs to be governed. What are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? And that's kind of why we thought at length about it and built the agent fabric piece of it, which is essentially, think about it, it's governance on top of what our APIs are allowed to be called from one agent to another. So this is a fascinating topic of how is this all going to work. And anytime I have had this conversation with CIOs, I'll just go back to this. Go to what you have today. It's no different. The person meeting you at the entry in the bank has only certain things they can do. They have a protocol. That protocol lets you go elevate to the next person who can only do certain things, and the next and the next and next. Nothing is going away from it. That's the only way, as of today, we humans comprehend, and we have clear guidelines, policies, workflows, rules. That is all that matters. So, as much as we like or don't like, these are codified in some way, shape, or form in SaaS systems. And so that is why SaaS systems are always the rage as it relates to an LLM versus a SaaS product. How do you really think about it? That's why it is. It's important that we know how businesses are run today, and agents are there to really follow along the way so that we can have a natural transition from purely human to human communication to a combination of human to human plus machine communication on the other side.
Wow. And if I think about it, human to human, what I have access to, then agent to human, what agent has access to, and then agent to agent, all of the information that the agent is able to access. Think about multiplying that, and it becomes this unfathomable system. And then on top of that, if you bring one vendor with a specific agent in a certain department that talks to a different agent, you really have to get the governance down. And because the explosion of information, you can't just approach it from a policy perspective and throw human at the problem, but rather like using AI and the discipline. And then the last thing is like people always talk about, hey, I'm gonna vibe code an agent that takes maybe like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but do I feel comfortable just letting that run in my engineering operations team? Sounds like based on this conversation, the answer is absolutely not.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of vibe coding, by the way. We need to be clear about that. As I said before, AI should be used for helping with things that are scarce. The scarcity in terms of code gen and what Claude has done recently is just really, really good. They really lowered the bar for entry. Anyone can wipe code anything instantly. But coding has never been the biggest problem in technology. That's just one of the steps in technology. What happens after you code? Once you get it out there, who is going to run it? How is it going to run? How do you know it's still running? How do you know that it's evolving the right way that you want it to evolve? And that's a huge portion of the energy that goes in. I actually tell my teams in almost all the projects we do, 60% of our time goes in the non-feature areas, right? The scaffolding, the fundamental abilities you need to give to your software around usability, reliability, performance, scale, availability, those are the ones that matter. And at the end of the day, those problems still remain, whether it is coded by an agent or not. So vibe coding is a great, great, great way to get the POC done. It eliminates the barrier for communication. People have always had, I can't quite explain to you what I want you to build as a product manager or as a customer. But now, with the help of AI, I can explain it to you. But that doesn't mean that's production grade code ready to go right now. That doesn't mean that it'll run flawlessly on its own, that I can run billions of dollars worth of business on it. It's not happening unless and until we take the steps to really, really, really design them with systems in mind, processes in mind, tools in mind, the diversity that we talked about in mind. We are not only talking about agent diversity, we are going to be in a world where regular applications and agents have to interop for a long, long time, just because of the nature of these systems that have been built over, decades right now. So there's a lot to unpack there as it relates to our evolution as an industry to purely rely on an LLM or even purely rely on an agent without the right scaffolding and the systems in place.
Wow, that's very helpful perspective. It sounds like ultimately we're accountable. And so when just because there's agents that are doing solving some problems, you're basically holding your teams, and what our customers are doing is also to like put humans with the judgment to hold the machines accountable as well. Maybe, we're coming to an end. I want to kind of do a lightning round with you. What's kind of the most overrated trend right now?
Oh,
Share a
very
bit more.
simple, very easy, Vivian. Build an agent. That's all you need to do right now. The most overrated trend. An agent can do it. I think this is really, the most easy analogy is this. If you're a pilot sitting in an airplane, you're used to 15 controls. All it just means is suddenly someone gave you 50 more controls on top of the 15 and said, fly the plane. That's what we are treating the agents to be. But what you really need is an air traffic control, someone who's going to keep you all safe in an airport. And that's the kind of analogy that you need to think in an enterprise as you unleash agents. Each one is an airplane flying on its own, doing its own thing. It's not going to work unless you really bring together all of them with the right framework of why they exist, what they're supposed to do, what agency they have, what's the right contact, what's the problem, what's the governance, what's the security, how they're going to work with each other to move your system forward. So the biggest overrated trend is let's just build an agent.
That's very helpful, because every day there's a new technology, there's a new trend that's vibing on like X. So tell me, if I'm a CIO at a manufacturing business, and my day job is not to just look at, follow this trend. What is like the critical skill I need to be building? I want to get up to date on AI data. Sounds like they're very important. Everyone's talking about the agents. Share more.
Yeah, I think the only skill that I wish leaders always hone in on from time to time is systems thinking. It is not about the AI, it's not about the data, it's about your business. What are you really trying to accomplish in your domain? And what is that you're building as a whole, as a system? And how do you further your business? That's really the focus. It needs to be about systems, processes, and it so happens there is a new tool in the block called AI. That's the way to think about it. Nothing of what you have done before is different in the sense that you still need to think about process mining, you still need to think about efficiency, you still need to think about cost levers, you still need to think about your customers, your margins, customer willingness to pay. Where is the next dollar going to come from? You still need to think about your capacity, your expansion, your growth plans, your geography plans. None of that is changing. Sure, there's a new tool that can help you reason over it from time to time, but that's not going to do anything. So the most important skill for a leader in this time is really while accepting and adapting the change that's coming in the form of new tools, really going back to the fundamentals of systems thinking.
Okay. This actually makes it more digestible, right? Hey, systems thinking, the processes, the operations, how you think about workflow, and the business objectives. Apply the same kind of knowledge, see AI data as a new tool, which for any CIOs, we should always learn the latest and the greatest, and then think about how to apply it in the specific business context. Thank you so much, Robbie. I really appreciated this conversation. It's brought a lot of great information and so much for us to follow up on and digest. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
having.
thanks, Vivian. This is a great conversation. If there's one thing I'd like to leave people, it's this, AI isn't just about smarter models or tools. The real work ahead for all of us is to say, how do we take it, put it in the right context, make the best decisions, and still stay focused on the bigger business that we are all after, no matter what industry or, domain that we are part of. All models are going to be the same. All of our competitors are using the same models. It's like a utility of the day. So where is the difference? Why is someone going to do business with one company versus other? Has always been the same. It's your own unique domain, your own secret sauce of why your business is different from your competitor. That is still going to be the case. Pretty excited for where it's all going to go, and hoping to learn more from future podcasts of yours from other leaders across the industry. Thank you for the opportunity.
Amazing. Thank you.